The chair would entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Tisdale,
Second.
second by Mr. Gray. Any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Mayor's report.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. You got it. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, she's going to
Come up and find, yeah, I think I'm ready. Yeah, please.
In the audit.
He said, yeah, you do.
Yeah, Kim Marmalich is in there.
I was in the budget mode now.
Got to get mine all situated so that. Well, I'm Kim Marmalich. I'm the audit department partner at AVL. I'm here to present your audit report, but it takes a team of accounting professionals to perform your audit. And Maria Saylor, who is the audit manager that performed the audit and oversaw the audit, is on vacation this week, so she's not with me. So I'm going to do this with the help of Diana and go through your audit report. So we're going to talk about what's in this PowerPoint, and it's also going to be up on this slide, but I think it'll be easier if you walk through the paper, and then that'll be there for anybody who doesn't have the paper to follow the presentation. If we go to page 3 of the PowerPoint, you see that you have 3 items from me. One is a thick stapled letter. That's the report to those charged with governance. One is a thin stapled letter. That's the recommendations to management. And then you have the green report, which is the bound audit report. First one, the thick letter, its purpose is to outline my responsibility as your auditor, your responsibility as auditees. You'll notice in here that the city early implemented a governmental auditing standard, GASB 101. It's discussed in here and also in your financial report. The journal entries that we propose to your accounting records are attached to the back. And then if we had had any difficulties performing the audit, we would have reported it here, but we did not have any difficulties. So there was nothing else to report in here. This is something you can look through on your own for more detail about what I just talked about. The small letter, as part of the audit, we do a walkthrough of your internal controls. We're looking at controls over city resources, making sure that they're in place, they're strong, and they're working. If we found anything of significance, it would be reported to you in this green bound report. There's nothing, as we move through the presentation, you'll see that there are no findings in this report. Other recommendations and keeping you abreast of new accounting standards get put in this letter, and this is not something I go through as part of the presentation. Your management has it. We've discussed it with your management, and it's here for your reference should you want to read it and discuss it with your management. So the rest of the time we're going to spend on this report, the bound report. And that's why we're going to keep on moving through the PowerPoint presentation. If you go to page 4 of the PowerPoint, these financial statements are as of 9/30/24. We're looking back in time. They're historical in nature. They really are not a representation of the city's current financial position. This was an audit done on last fiscal year. Our audit report's on page 2 through 4. It's a unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can offer. And also the report that I spoke of, if there were any internal control findings that were significant, is found on page 75 and 76 of this town report. Nothing reported there. On page 5 of the PowerPoint, on the bound report, pages 5 through 13 in the report is management's discussion and analysis. This is done by Diana, and it is a summarized version of these financial statements. If you wanted just a snapshot, you could read those few pages and get an overview of the audit. So that's a required statement that is placed in the audit report. Page 6 of the PowerPoint, governmental auditing standards require us to present, or you to present, 2 sets of financial statements, 2 full sets in this bound report, and they are different from each other. One set, which is on page 14 through 15 is your government-wide financial statements, and it's presented like a business. It's full accrual. All your assets, all your receivables, all the liabilities are in this report. Then on pages 16 through 23, you have your fund level financial statements. That's more like what you use to govern the city on an ongoing basis. It's on an economic resource model. We report revenues and expenditures when they're due within a small period of time. We don't report assets and liabilities. So if we move to page 8 of the PowerPoint, the next few pages are the government-wide. I'm going to point out what's different here, what I want you to know, but we're going to spend most of our time on the fund level because that's how you manage the city. On page 8, you'll see that it's broken out between governmental activities and business-type activities. Business-type activities are your water and sewer fund and your port and harbor fund. Within these financial statements, the things that are in here that will not be in the fund level is all your capital equipment, fixed assets are recorded here. Any liabilities and debt are recorded here. Receivables are recorded even if they aren't expected to be collected to pay current expenses. And then the largest liability that's recorded in here is the net unfunded pension liability. For the new council, the PERS, Mississippi State PERS plan is not funded fully. They push that down to all the participants of the plan, and you pick up a liability. The liability's in this report, but you're not going to have to pay this shortage anytime soon. It's just something that gets reported here. So if you look on page 9 of the PowerPoint, that's where you'll see the pension liability that I discussed, and it's reported in both the governmental funds and the business-type funds. If we move to page 10, this is still government-wide, full accrual. This is your statement of activities. It shows all of the revenues and expenses by function up top, and then the general revenues at the bottom. So this is a presentation that has all of those things that I just talked about in it that we won't see when we get to the fund level. That's all we're going to talk about on the government-wide. But now we move to page 12 of the PowerPoint. Here is the fund level balance sheet. And you'll see that the city has 3 major funds: general, capital projects, and debt service fund. And then there's a column called other non-major funds. There are 6 funds that don't rise to the level of being significant, so they're all grouped together in that column. You'll see your total assets by fund at the bottom of page 12. And if you go to page 13, that's where you're going to see the liabilities and the fund balance by fund. I want to take a minute now on page 14 of the PowerPoint and just talk about the general fund, because that's the city's big fund. So we're going to just take a little deeper dive on the general fund, compare it to 2023. What you'll see in comparison is cash was up $2.1 million. Your receivables were down 1.5, and that's because your lease receivables are being paid off and there were no new leases. That's what that decrease is. Your due from city funds, that varies. That's as other funds utilize money in the general fund, that amount goes up and down as it's repaid and loaned. So that due to city funds was down from prior year. In the middle of the page, you'll see the line called deferred inflow on leases. That's down in correlation with the lease receivable down. And then what I want to talk about, when you take all the assets minus all the liabilities, you get what's called fund balance. That's at the bottom of the page. And you'll see that you have some fund balances that you can't spend. It's not in cash form. That's $3.7 million. But the one I want to talk about right now is the unassigned fund balance. You ended the year with $18 million in unassigned fund balance. That is 2 months worth of city expenditures. If you look at what the GFOA, that's the Governmental Financial Officers Association, you look for what they recommend, and they recommend at a minimum that a city have at least 2 months of reserves of expenses. So you're right where you need to be according to the GFOA.
Question, Kim, on that unassigned fund balance, that can be allocated. The council can allocate those funds or that balance. It's an unassigned.
City can use for any city purpose. It's
Any-
not restricted, committed,
Right.
has no restraints other than the normal restraints of expenditures that the
Right.
council follows.
And from what you said with the Financial Officers Association, they'd like for you to have at least 2 months, you said, of payroll
No expenditures.
of expenditures. Okay.
They use 10 to 15% minimum of
Right.
2 months.
Okay.
Because basically you don't need to run the cash count down so low that
Right.
you're struggling.
Right.
And you have when we get to it, I'll point out expenditures. I want to say it's like 75 million expenditures. So
Okay.
you have a lot of expenditures for the year.
Thank you.
If we look at page 16, we're moving on from the balance sheet, the assets and the liabilities. Now we're moving to the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Presented the same way, the 3 major funds and then the lumped together 6 non-major funds. Page 16 shows you total revenue by each of those funds. On page 17, you'll see the total expenditures by each of those funds. And here's where we can see that you have 80 million expenditures for a year for the general fund. The next page, page 18, you have money comes in that doesn't fall in the first 2 categories. When you have new debt proceeds, it goes in other financing sources. Any transfers between funds are reported here. So those are the other miscellaneous items that come down to the change in fund balance. How much your net fund balance that we previously spoke changed from the prior year. Now we'll look at the general fund a little further. Look on page 19. There's really not that much change in the revenues for the general fund. Taxes did go up. Revenue really went up, but the biggest increase was related to charges for services, and that's garbage fees, the increase in garbage fees.
Okay. And these figures are actual figures, correct? They're not the original budget figures or the revised.
This is everything collected plus some receivables collected in the period of availability. These are actual numbers, actual money that's going to come in.
Actual numbers. So generally, when we're looking at expenditures, we're looking at the original budget figures, the revised figures, and then when the books are closed, I think month 13 is typically what we call it, you get the final figures. And then there are actual figures that we get from this audit, correct?
Not exactly. So let's take a minute and go. I don't have it in the PowerPoint presentation, so
Okay.
I'm going to point you to that.
We don't need to slow down. We can come back to this later. Go ahead, just continue.
I can answer the question pretty quick. So, and it kind of fits here. Budgetary comparison schedules on page 60 of the balance report.
On page 60,
Yes. And these numbers
thank you.
in this report that we're talking about that you asked me were actual or modified accrual. They're not cash basis. These numbers, you have to take out the part that is not yet received or paid out of these numbers. Bring it back to cash basis. And then the actual is cash in and out on a budget, not what we're expected to come in or what we're expected to pay in the next 60 days. So that's the difference between these two. Yes, it's actual, but it's not cash basis.
It's a modified accrual.
Look at
what you
page
said, right?
61, the bottom shows
It's
the
not budget.
reconciliation of the budget to these statements.
Okay. Thank you. You can go ahead. Thank you.
So the largest change in your revenue on page 19 of the PowerPoint was the garbage fees, but an overall increase of 1.7 million in revenues for the general fund in 2024 compared to 23. You look on page 20 of the PowerPoint, that's where you're going to see the expenditures by department. One of the changes is in the prior year, insurance premiums were reported in a non-departmental line. They've since been reallocated. We're in a more accurate or different place. So you see a decrease there, but an increase above, and then there were some salary increase, which results in the change in your expenses. If we look just at operating expenditures and revenue, you'll see that the general fund's expenses exceeded the revenues by 1.9 million. But if we go to page 21, we talked about those other categories of money that comes in, and you did have a new loan for vehicles, 2.1 million, which means the expense for the vehicles is above an expenses. So the revenue for that is on the page 21. So at the end of the day, you decreased your fund balance from the prior year, 920,000. So we talked about you having 2 months reserves. That's still sufficient even with the decrease. You used a little more revenue expenses than you had revenue for 24. Last fund we're going to talk about, page 23 of the PowerPoint, is going to be your water and sewer fund. That's actually the same at government-wide and at fund level because it's full accrual, so there's no difference between the two. So we just talk about it here at the fund level. If you look at your assets, they were down, and that's because your grant receivable was down in 24 compared to 23. That's related to FEMA receivable. It's timing. In the bottom of the page, you'll see you have increase in construction projects at the end of the year of 10 million. And then you'll see the 2 million expense of depreciation for assets in service. Every year you expense some of those until you use them all up. On the second page, or the next page, 24 of the PowerPoint, you'll see the liabilities are almost exactly the same as 2023. No big change there. And then your net assets, you do have some restricted for debt service. You have unrestricted of 6.6 million at the end of the year, and you have 358 million invested in the sewer assets, water and sewer assets. Page 26 of the PowerPoint, we'll see the revenue and expenses for the year. Your operating revenues were up about $500,000, and your operating expenses were also up, but that increase is related to the depreciation that we talked about of expensing those assets. It also looks like you have an operating loss when you look at it. The operating income is a loss, but that's totally related to the depreciation, which is a non-cash item. If you add that back, your revenues exceed your expenditures here. Bottom of the page, you'll see the capital contributions line. You received a subdivision donation 2024. In the prior year, there were some transfers of assets to the water and sewer, which is why that number is larger. But this year, the 955,000 is related to a subdivision. 2024. And the last statement related to water and sewer that we'll look at is on page 28 of the PowerPoint, and it's the cash flow. You brought in $3 million from operating activities, $11 million from non-capital financing activities, and then you used $17 million. An overall decrease in your cash of $1.5 million in 2024. That's all I'm going to talk about the statements themselves. On page 29 of the PowerPoint, I've listed some note disclosures that you can look at that give you more detail of the items in the financial statements. It just breaks it down even further. And then on page 30 of the PowerPoint, you received 18.9 million federal funding. That requires you to have a single audit. What a single audit is we follow guidelines with the federal government. We select the federal programs they want us to look at. We do the testing they want us to test, and we see if we see anything related to those. Happy to report this year that there were no findings for current. Everything's been filed with the Federal Clearinghouse on time. So there is nothing to report. We found nothing. And we had to look at 3 major programs and found no noncompliance or no internal control related issues. Those. In the last report, we have to test that your compliance with state laws and regulations. That report's on page 85, and there were no findings of compliance in that report either. And that concludes what I want to tell you today. Do you have any questions? Or, I know this is a lot. There's no way to digest it all, especially as this is the first time you're hearing this type of presentation. You're welcome to reach out to me for questions, for me to help you understand this report, which is, it's pretty thick. It's 85 pages. So I'll be available to answer any questions at another time that you might have after you think through what we talked about.
Let me say, Kim, too, I think the last audit, when we talked about 23, there was a number of more than one issue because we just had more to audit last year, and it brought us up to the deadline. We had no real issues this year with regard to numbers of single audits we had to do. So that's why we're here in July, yeah.
Your staff has worked very hard to get you all caught up. They were very responsive during the audit and provided everything that we needed. The audit went very smooth.
But in 23, like I said, there was a large number of things to audit because of the volumes that we encountered, over 8 million or something like that. Was I think
we still had 3 this year. We had to do CTP this year.
Because of the 5-year plan, yeah. But
3 programs this year, and but it's not
7 last year, something like that. 4
last year, 3 this year. I would say the average is 2. You have this Restore Act money and the ARPA funds. That's throwing a kink in everything and requiring more programs.
Examination.
It's based on dollars and when the programs have last been audited. That's how we determine it. But it's no auditor judgment. We literally go through a checklist and answer questions, and at the end of the result is the final process. We follow what they tell us to do.
Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll move on to council reports. Mr. Gray, any council report?
I don't have any.
No report?
No report.
No report?
No report.
No report?
No report.
No report.
No report.
And I have no report. We'll move to the public agenda, citizens' comments. We got ample time to go over any topic you want to speak on. However, this is not a question and answer session. You can comment, make statements on your opinion on any topic you want to. You'll have a total of approximately 3 minutes, and we'll go ahead and start on this side of the room. My left, your right. Anyone have any comments? We'll move on to my right, your left. Anyone in the back of the room? Mr. Abide, is that your hand up, or? That's, okay, you're just waving, okay. All right, we'll go ahead and close public, or citizens' comments is closed. We'll move on to the policy agenda. If the clerk could read the subject matter.
Subject matter is the meeting is to discuss the fiscal year 2025-2026 municipal budget.
All right, I'll start on my left. Mr. Gray, you have anything you want to add to the budget discussions?
No, I don't.
All right, we'll go over to this side, Mr. Shoemaker.
You're going to mix it up a little bit today.
Yeah,
Just
let's
one
mix it up.
question. Just curious, I know we gave employee pay raises last year that were pretty substantial. Any talk this year, or do we know yet of any kind of employee pay raise?
Some talk with directors. I think we're concentrating on that because I've been examining that since that last cycle 10-1 last year. But that would be, it may be adjusting some positions due to vacancies.
Okay. All right. That's
But
good.
not across the board, like we
Right,
did. You know,
but-
our main goal, and it probably cost us, what, 1.3, 1.5 million to bring the $13.75 an hour plus the, you call that the longevity back in play. So that's,
PERS increased
I mean,
too.
PERS increased to 19. Yeah, so that was the major push of wages and salaries and benefits.
Right, okay. And one last question, quick question. Employees, I know it fluctuates, but do we know a number, say today or in the last week or so, it's over 700 now? Or do we know? Employees, full-time employees?
No, 600 something.
6, okay, all right. Good deal. Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Marshall? Mr. Tisdale?
I know next week we'll start looking at departmental budgets. I have a format I prefer, and I appreciate you sending me the spreadsheet in the format that I'd requested. But basically what it does, usually at this time of the year in the budget, in each department, we have combined supplies, other services and charges, and contractual services into one line item. And I'd like those broken down individually, if you don't mind. Anyway, here's a sample. You're welcome to take this if you like. Thank you. Great. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Nail, you have it? All right. Mr. Creel?
This sheet this is the, with the new tax rate divisions, right?
Correct. Kenny had those questions last week, so I made a form for us to talk about it today. And I took just 17.5 million of grocery revenue, and I multiplied it by the current rate of 7%. And then we would get an 18.5 diversion, which comes to the 226. And then I did the same thing with the 5% new rate, and then the new 25.9% diversion. And you will see that we get the same amount, even though the diversion increased, but because the tax went down, it comes out the same.
Perfect, thank you.
And then the bottom part is where I reevaluated gaming revenue, and I still feel that 23 million is right. Year to date, we're only up $30,000 to prior year. And if we did the same amount as last year for the next 3 months, we would be right under the 23 million. And if we had the 0.2% growth that we've had thus far, it would still bring us right under 23 million. And then I did a 0.5% and 1%, and I don't see either one of those happening.
And looking at the sheet that you gave us here, it looks like 23 million seems to be the norm that we've been operating off of.
For the past 3 years, yes.
I might add, that's record year, so. I
Right.
mean,
Well,
Yeah, that's-
record year was fiscal year '23, and actually '24's revenues were down to '23, not substantially, but it was down $500,000. I believe '25 will finish almost like '24 did.
As far as GGR, I think it was down like 30 million gross gaming revenue. That netted that amount down.
Right, they're down.
The only other thing that I was talking with Diana about, if you look at the gaming device revenue, okay, it was up higher in past years to about 1.5 million a year. Okay, that's the $150 per gaming device. What is it now this year?
It's like almost 1.1.
1.1. So I don't, there's a question in my mind whether we got we're getting everything recorded the right way, but that's a, Department of Revenue question I need to answer. There may be some, I just got a feel that there are more gaming devices out there than we've, been getting credit for. So that's something we will chase.
Leaving some money on the table.
Well, we
Perfect,
called and inquired, but they would not give us specific details.
But, just like anything, hey, trust would verify.
That's right.
Right. I have a question along those lines. So gaming revenue, we get, I think it's a lagging revenue by a month or
It's
so.
a month and a whole.
And for gaming devices, we don't receive
year.
that 3 times a year. Okay.
Times a year.
No, we receive it upon their gaming
Or some of
renewal.
every- every
We don't get
distribution.
something every month.
Right.
Heavy, and
Yeah.
about 3 times a year, it's heavy.
There's months that are more, that's correct.
Right, but it's not every month.
No, it's not every
Okay,
month.
Okay.
Mr. Creel, you still have the floor.
I'm good, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for doing some due diligence on that. I still want to bet you a Barks root beer that they're going to be up. There was a recent article that came out on gaming revenues and also online sports betting revenues, and the indicators, and I think this was for May, the indicators are that it's up, especially on the coast. They did an assessment, and I'll send the article along to you, And I certainly want to be conservative. I don't want to overstate revenues if they're not going to be where we think they are, and I believe that's what everybody's trying to do. But as we get more into the budget over the next month, and if we get more data, I still want to reserve the right maybe to, if we feel differently, then maybe we move that needle up. If not, we leave it the same. But I really appreciate it. I asked you to look at it, and I really appreciate you taking another scrub at it and making sure they're going to be accurate. Okay. Any other comments on anything? Otherwise, we're going to go with this going forward with the revenue. They still can change if we have a consensus that we feel that we have data and information that we feel we need to change it either up or down. But in the subsequent budget meetings, we're going to get into the expenses pretty hot and heavy. So hold on as we get ready to rock and roll. Mayor?
Let me close one thing. We are chasing a number of figures and kind of forecasting in our mind. A couple of things, fines we expect, to have some movement in the right direction. That may change. And as I said, the gaming device may put us in a better situation, but also the sale of property. We've got a number of pieces of property that cost us some effort every year, just to hold the property. So really, and I don't know what you want to call it, just sale of property. So I'm sure we got 20 pieces of property that, if we can put it back on the tax roll and keep us paying $75 a month cleaning it, that's another place that we may increase the revenue picture.
Okay. At this time, okay, Mr. Marshall.
The question is, the Piers shortage, do we have a number on that, the amount?
The Piers.
It's the shortage? Yeah, the Piers, yeah, we're shorted. We're short. How short are we?
Are you referring to what
It's
Kim was
fine.
speaking
Yeah.
about in the audit report?
Right.
The liability.
Our net pension liability with PERS is $128 million.
And how does that work? When do we start worrying about it?
Well, I think
I worry about it often.
No, I think, if I may comment, I think, and tell me if I'm off base here, Diana, but this is, every city has
Every city
this
does have a net
liability,
pension,
and it's
correct.
because statewide, the state retirees, the PERS board and legislature requires, or hopefully PERS will come up with guidelines and determine who's going to pay what to bring the pension up so that it can cover that liability out for 50 years or?
Right.
And
But
number-
like last year, the state of Mississippi, I believe, put in $100 million to help make the PERS system
Right.
correct.
Yeah, so you have employees contributing and individuals, and if that's not enough, then basically at some point, the state has to dip into their pockets
Right.
and pay the difference. So,
The state could come to us and say, it's your turn. We
Right.
need 10 million.
no, exactly. And
So, I mean, they've stiffened it up a couple of percent over the last couple of
But
cycles.
but a demand such as that would be made to all the cities. The fact of the matter is, basically, it's just the lights flashing red, letting everybody know, and it could be that the state
Right.
next year or next month says, hey, Biloxi, cough up your, how many, 121 million?
128. And our net pension liability goes up about $8-9 million a year.
Right, as does every other as does every other entity, whether it's a school district or
Right.
the county. So we're all in this together, basically. So everybody has a liability. That's the big number. So, thanks.
So basically, we are kicking,
Million, is
we're
that a
kicking the
percentage?
can.
Mr. Marshall?
I didn't hear you.
Mr. Marshall?
Yeah, we're basically kicking the can down the road, hoping the state don't come back and ask us to do that.
Well, some of it is deferred in how the system works, but at some point in time, I'm sure it's invested in different types of mutual funds, markets, and that if it takes a dip, there could be where they come and say, we need more money.
And what's on the table too, I think, is a multi-layer, people who are just joining, and instead of 30 years, go out to 35s, and that changes the arithmetic
Right, and there's
of
no
everything.
longer going to be a COLA adjustment every year with that new
Right.
group as well.
So it's going to tailor, it won't be dropping, or liability might be increased as much as it has, but they could kick us up 2%,
But we have a 0.5% for
On the
5
table,
years.
Mr. Creel, comment?
That was, so the 8 or 9 million increase, is that a certain percentage or is that just an amount?
That's an amount.
That's an amount.
Right. If you go to the PERS system, they have an audit report out there, and each city is allocated an amount. And then we take that and we convert it across to come up with our numbers.
Okay.
And it's based off of how many employees we have in the retirement system, what their salaries are, what's needed, what's the expected longevity.
Is that just city employees? That include the school as well?
It's only us, city employees only. Everybody has their own dealings with PERS.
It was also mentioned in the report that the other non-major governmental funds, 6 of them. What are those 6?
They're on page 73. The page number's changed. I might have that wrong.
The two primary water sewer.
No. Those aren't them. It's like unemployment, Dreamers, Femurs. It's CDBG, employment disability, unemployment, bicentennial, the baseball maintenance fund, and Friends of the Sanger. It's page 70.
70. Hold on. Mayor, wasn't you looking for $200,000?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What was that?
Mayor, weren't you looking for $200,000 for the Singer Theater?
Wait, I gotta get my glasses on.
The Friends of the Singer.
On the Sanger,
Yeah, what is that? How does that work?
the Sanger is in a mode,
No,
Friends of the Sanger is donated money. There used to be a separate organization, and I don't remember their exact name. Peter, do you? And was it Friends of the Sanger? And they gave us a $43,000 check. And then People's Bank and somebody else gave us an additional amount to bring us to that piece.
Okay. So Mayor, that's how you was talking about raising the money to pay
Right.
back.
activities to raise the money, but it would be residing there as far as if things are, electrical and those kinds of things would be coming out of that
So the
fund.
money the $200,000 that you borrowed could possibly be paid through this fund if it increases.
All this money's been spent. It's zero now. This is as of September 30th.
Right. Is that fund still open?
It's still open, but it's zero.
Yeah, because I was also concerned about, the $200,000 to be paid back. We was wondering how was it going to be paid back?
You're doing fundraising.
We're fundraising to pay hopefully more than 20,000. I mean, but literally, we just allocated $200,000. What was it, the budget in this year?
Yes.
To handle the interior renovations or finishing up with carpet and lights and so forth. But there are a number of other things that, from a fundraising, selling bricks and some of the advertisements and sponsorships. But that would be the mechanism. Friends of the Sanger would be able to fund those additional things. But we're in the carpet mode, we're in the lighting mode, the HVAC is done, but the audio visual stuff.
So you did put $200,000 in the budget coming up for next year.
This year, for FY '20, it's in '25 budget, not the coming '26 budget.
All right.
I just want to add that this report, of course, is 23-24, and we heard our auditor kind of explain some of the highlights. We're already into this year, which is 24-25, getting ready to end it.
Into journal interest.
And then the next thing we're charged with is approving a budget for 25-26. With that, any other questions, Mr. Marshall? You have the floor. Anyone else? The chair would entertain a motion.
Kenny, I have something to say. Can I?
Okay, sure.
I just wanted to point out that I passed out some new revenue sheets, and there have been no changes on here except to transfers. I got a little ahead of myself, and I gave y'all a $10 million figure last week, and it's been reduced to 3.25 because I can only look at this year at this point in time. That 10 million figure will come back into play once we get to the combined fund statement.
Okay. So don't get confused that it's completely going away, is what you're saying.
Right, it's not going away, but it
That's
is
right.
reduced in here.
Okay.
And the other number that is still an estimate in here is the administration fee. Right, because we're not that far yet to calculate it, but the general fund will bill the water sewer fund and the port fund for services, and then that becomes an admin fee. It's towards the back.
All right. If everybody would make a note of that as we go forward. Any other?
Is there
Diana?
administration fee and what else? What was the first one?
I
Diana,
didn't hear you.
He's asking you why was the 10 million
which was
reduced
the
to
first
3?
one? I got the administration fee is wrong, but it's the first one you said was wrong.
The transfers went from the 10 million to the 3 million because at this point in time, we're only looking at this year. Once we get to the combined fund statement, it'll start with fund balance. And some of those projects will be coming from that piece. But on here, I can only do the part that's from the revenue for this year that's going to be transferred out.
Okay. Mr. Tisdale, you had any comments?
Yeah, do we have a projected ending balance yet for this fiscal year?
Not yet.
Okay. We don't, of course, we don't have one for 26 yet. Do we know what a mill currently generates?
When I say it's 950?
950.
No, hold on. I may have that wrong. That's the number in my head.
He says 7.
It's 790. I knew it had a 9 in it. 790.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it went up 30.
That's always a good thing, thank you. Are we looking and I'm happy to come if this is not the appropriate time, are we looking to float any bond issues in next fiscal year?
I'm not sure. We talked a little bit about things. We're facing a lot of things. A number of air conditioning issues, a number of generator issues. Because some of those things that may make sense, depending on the interest rates, instead of spreading something that's going to last 10 years or 12 years into 1 or 2 years, we may do some things along that line. I think we met with Lindsay and Jason, that may be a way to do that. That's the kind of borrowing I'm talking about. But, it's $700,000 to $800,000 on generators that may need to be at the end of its life cycle right now. And generators for not so much lift stations, but air conditioning units. And I think we're faced with $30,000 or $40,000 right now at the ball field, as well as Seafood Industry Museum, and maybe so at Civic Center. But, if we need to go do something, that's the kind of borrowing I'm talking about in order to spread the life, across the number of years in financial.
The ball field, you're talking about Shuckers, Keesler?
Yeah.
I know, okay, just wanted to verify
It would
that.
be helpful in the next several weeks to make a determination on that so we know whether to take that into account when we're looking at the budget.
And, as I mentioned too, that a fire truck, and the chief is here, a fire truck that we paid $520-something thousand to get one on order, it's $937,000. Is that right? So, that didn't all come in 1 year, but it's down the road. So how do we fade that is the question. We don't have the answer yet. And a number of other capital items that, trucks or vacuum trucks or trailers or something like that, that's all part of the equation. If it's going to last us 10 years or 15 years, I would rather spread that over a number of years instead of, reducing all our in one FY year. If that makes sense.
Okay. We don't have any estimate for our legal debt limit, do we? right now for fiscal year '26? Probably not. I'm thinking usually somewhere around 80 million.
We
give or
should have
take.
plenty of room.
Yeah, we have
We've
Okay.
never, we usually hover around half.
Okay.
What do you call plenty of room? A number, a general number? What do you call plenty of room? A number? What number?
$7,
How
$8
much?
million. I mean, we could go borrow $2 or $3 million in a heartbeat and still not, jeopardize anything. We still have plenty of margin. I think our last, we can get Lindsay and Jason to come and make that sort of statement. Once we get to a mode where, hey, we need to go borrow this money because these are the equipments we're going to borrow. We can't do with that. We can't do without air conditioner. Can't do without generators. May have to purchase a new generator for the communications, right, Chris? So, when you're breaking a threshold of $1 million, $2 million for those kinds of items, I think it makes sense to spread it over. Borrow it and pay for it over time.
Sure, and I would imagine, I know there's a project I'd like to see done, a project or two I'd like to see done in my ward. My colleagues up here may have those same concerns. I mean, I've got the water lines out in Edgewater Estates. I know we need to have some roads we repaved, and nobody wants to repave them until whatever infrastructure issues are addressed, so.
The water and sewers
Things
is
of that
a
nature.
different mode, so I mean,
Right.
that's a different mode. But there's some other things where hopefully, if we're successful in the legislative mode, that like ARPA and some of these other things, that may give us some opportunity. We'll develop the wish list and the need list, and then figure out how we best put it on a pay list.
Okay.
So I'm hearing a number of 80 million, right?
I'm sorry?
I'm hearing a number of about 80 million. That's what you just said, right?
For the debt limit.
The debt limit. Is that what I'm?
Yeah, we could go borrow 8 or 9 million without with 8 or 9 million to go borrow without putting us in the
Borrow the whole
jackpot.
amount.
Is that the number? Am I hearing 80 million is a possibility?
Eight.
8 or 9.
8 or 9 million, yeah. But we're talking about borrowing 2 or 3 million, if shooting from the hip. And that would put us in a debt service. I'm not sure but we probably can get it at 4%, 4.1.
Okay.
We made some good moves in refinancing before and really saved significant. We've jumped from about 5% down to 1.29 at the right time, and that saved us some big time, like $300,000 a year in water and sewer debt. So we can't be bashful when it comes to, hey, this is an opportunity. This is, because, who knows what tomorrow brings, but I know we lock in on it, on those numbers. We're locked in for a while. And I think it's a 15-year period. 15 years what we borrowed, the 7 and the 14. The debt was at 15 years. Didn't we pay for what was the last one? The 2023 bond for $5 million. That was for 15 years. We borrowed the monies, I think, for 15 years, not 20 or 30 years. 15 years. Yeah, 15 years. But that's a play we'll develop.
So I just want to ask, because y'all got to excuse me, but I want to be clear. Okay, I'm not asking how much we can go and borrow easily. I'm asking what is the limit?
How much can we borrow?
What is the limit?
At 2024, it was 86 million. Since the millage has gone up, I have not recalculated it yet. And if we went up, right,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I mean, it's got to be anywhere from 86 to 90 million now. I'll have to recalculate it.
That's what I wanted. Thank you. It's a big difference. I know we can go borrow 8 and 9 million, but I need to know what is that actual, that's all.
Limited. Yeah, right.
All right. Let me know when you're ready, Diane. I have another question. This deals with transfers. Take your time.
Deals with transfers?
Transfers. So that number was 10.3. You've put it down to 3.2, basically. Can you tell me exactly how much of that is, of that 3.25 million, how much of that is going to ARPA projects?
None.
None. What about FEMA projects?
No, it's not. No, 3.5 is going to infrastructure. 500,000 is coming from the baseball stadium, and 250 is going to the baseball maintenance fund.
So that's, all right, so bear with me. 500,000 is going to the baseball stadium?
No, it's coming from the baseball stadium.
Coming from stadium. All right, and you said $250,000 was for?
The baseball maintenance, it'll go to that.
$250,000 going to baseball maintenance. And then the balance of that, you said, was for infrastructure projects?
Go to capital projects.
All right.
That's all that is budgeted so far.
All right, and when you say infrastructure projects,
It could be paving, it could be water sewer.
right. No, I'm assuming those are related to capital projects? Okay. So could you break it down? You may not be able to do that now, but you could send me an email or have it at the next meeting, which specific projects this would go for? Are they current capital projects or are they planned capital projects?
There's nothing planned yet. I mean, we haven't had that conversation yet.
Okay, so these are for existing capital projects.
Well, no, it's for next year. It'll be new items.
All right, so that's roughly, what, 3.25, so about 2.5 million would be for capital projects in 2026?
Correct.
And do we know what those capital projects are?
Not yet.
And do you want the council to make suggestions for those capital projects?
Suggestions are always helpful.
Okay. This may be a premature question, forgive me. In looking at the millage and how that's distributed, general fund, disability, and whatever.
Debt service.
DNR funds, debt service and solid waste and collection and disposal. Do we know how that millage is going to be distributed or not yet? Do you have a?
I have it broken down. I don't have dollar amounts, I don't think. Okay, do you want mills and dollars or just mills?
Just mills will be fine.
Okay, I have 20.6 go into the general fund, and that
Okay.
includes trash.
So that includes the solid waste collection
Correct.
and disposal?
Correct.
All right, so solid waste and collection and disposal basically goes to zero then, right? It doesn't go to zero. You just move that from that item or that millage broken down.
Right, it's in that number.
It's gonna
I
be
can't remember if it's 0.37. I have to look at it
Yeah,
again.
it varies. It's kind of declined every year. Last year it was 0.13 mils, so it's practically nothing, but it's still.
Right, it's still there
Okay.
for the shortfall.
All right, DNR funds?
1.35 and 0.21. And then debt is 7.94.
So for DNR funds, you said 1.35 and,
0.21.
okay, I see what you done, okay. All right, and that'll give us, currently as we stand now, that'll give us, the total millage would remain the same as 30.1?
Yep.
Okay, let's see. I don't think I have any more questions, Kenny, but if
All
I
right.
do, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Mr. Tisdale, anyone
Thank you,
else have any
Diana. Appreciate
additional
that.
questions? No additional questions? The chair would like to entertain a motion that we call our next budget meeting at the end of our July 15th meeting. So immediately following our 1:30 meeting, if we would go into another budget meeting, I'd like to inform the council, if we can make progress, we can keep these going on Tuesdays. If we fall behind schedule, we may have to do it other days of the week as everyone's schedule can possibly kind of adhere to that. But we got a lot of work to do to make this happen, a lot of hard decisions. We got a good starting point, and I appreciate the hard work Diana, the mayor, our new CAO, and our directors are putting into this process. So do I have a motion?
Second.
All right, motion by Mr. Shoemaker, seconded by Mr. Tisdale. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to, I guess, adjourn.
What we just did.
No,
No,
that was-
we didn't adjourn yet.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Creel. I have a second. Who seconded it?
Oh, that was-
Mr. Nail, discussion, all in favor? Those opposed?
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was for our next workshop, right?